I'm going to start this segment of the show with a visual. Imagine being in a giant symphony hall, filled with people. Suddenly the curtain opens and there's 50 more musicians just sitting on stage and waiting. And suddenly this gentleman, his name is James Judd, walks out to the podium, acknowledges the audience, turns his back to the audience, raises his hand, and when that baton comes down, the room starts filling with music, and the people sit back and they just let the music take over. And in the end, they must have had a good time because they're all standing up and cheering. That is such an awesome power. What does it feel like?
Well, it feels fantastic, especially working with young musicians, as we did the other day.
You're an orchestra conductor. Could you just explain what you do?
Conductor is one musician amongst many musicians. And we're a catalyst. Well, it's a way like riding a horse, driving a car. We're just adjusting things. But really, we're inviting musicians to make chamber music together. We're, of course, in rehearsals, we're shaping things. We're listening to the musicians. We're listening to their musical thoughts through our ears, not through so much words. In concert, we're adjusting, we're going with the direction of the performance. We are eventually, it's a strange thing, there is a telepathy between musicians and conductor, which we can't describe easily. If a conductor suddenly gets a little nervous or starts to feel, oh, I'm worried about the next moment where there's a dangerous moment for ensemble, and you freeze up, something will go wrong. If you're worried about, in Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony, in the slow movement is this magnificent and difficult to play horn solo. If you as a conductor start to worry, is the horn player going to make the next note? He will split the note.
Wow.
I mean, so there is that thing going on. But basically, the old days where a conductor was more dictatorial, it was the maestro. Those days have passed. Now, in any case, it's always been the greatest orchestras, the greatest maestri, today or in the past. It's always been about letting the musicians express themselves whilst bringing everything under a architectural kind of umbrella into a building. But then there has to be freedom and expression. So that doesn't answer your question at all.
Well, no, it does. I just have a follow-up point. So basically, you structure the piece. Yeah. I want horns here, I want this there, and I want it to come in. Which, if you think of the brain as having the left side and the right side, that's left side thinking. But you also have the right side of your brain that actually hears the sounds, and you say, no, I want that there, that doesn't work. I want this here, this works. And you're able to put it together so that others could follow. Well,
a musician, I think, whether you're a conductor or a pianist, you're thinking in 3 dimensions, in a sense, in time.
Okay.
Whatever time is. You're thinking in a way, there's the past, there's what I have studied, what I want to achieve. There's what you're hearing now, and there's the very important anticipation of the next events. So there are these 3 things going on. That's why the study of music at any level is so vital for children, because that's why we have demonstrated all over the world scientifically that the study of music, even in its most rudimentary form, especially the study of an instrument, will accelerate learning in other areas. And we have noticed that the Miami Music Project, one of the things we do is we put music into the schools. And we have orchestras from the age of 4 based on the El Sistema model in Venezuela, which has been now so successful over nearly 40 years. In Venezuela, there are now almost 500,000 school children playing in orchestras all over Venezuela. And what we've discovered, all of us who are in music education or conducting all over the world, because everybody's interested in that today. And I work every year with the Asian Youth Orchestra, I work with the New Zealand Youth Orchestra in Australia. I was conducting the opening of the Curtis Institute this year, for example. I love to work every year with 2 or 3 different youth things. You will find everywhere, everybody will say the same thing. If you teach a child music, you will see within a few months their grades go up in other areas. And the little orchestra we have, based on the El Sistema model in the Doral, we noticed in 6 months, we had a, it's not a perfect scientific study, but it's good enough. We showed that the kids that are going now into honors in other subjects, honors classes, has gone up from sort of like 60% up to about 86%. And that was in a few months.
Wow.
So apart from the emotional enjoyment, the intellectual enjoyment of music, music is a great way simply to teach history, maths, language, everything, almost everything.
Well, if there are educators out there who really recognize how broken our educational system is, you need to speak to this man, because he's got a solution for a lot of those problems.
Well, can I just say something? You mentioned about education out there is broken. It's broken because I believe, and many of us, that there is somewhere in the background is a deliberate policy not to educate the poorer people in this country, because then you can control them with ridiculous Fox headline news and garbage, political idiots. I'm very sorry, but the truth is that musical education is what gets cut first, because if you study culture, you might even start asking questions between what's black and white.
Yeah, and the same thing with all the arts. You're absolutely right.
That's what all of the problems we face are, in my view, under that. And I'm getting old, so I don't care what I say anymore, but it just outrages me, and it outrages a lot of my colleagues and friends. In fact, I don't know that I've spoken to anybody recently who doesn't believe the same thing, honestly.
I totally believe it. And if you want to get together and see what we can do, just as individuals who care, I'd be happy to join some sort of a movement with you.
Great, let's start it right now.
Okay, we're gonna.
You'll have to be president, because I'm only a green card holder.
Oh well, no, but we could make you the king.
I think I'm a few centuries too late for that.
Well, but you could be the king of this movement, because you're British, and British, you'd make a much better king than I would. You got to have fun with this show, It's okay. James, we've heard about your success in your profession, but tell us a little bit. When did you decide, I'm going to be a conductor? And how did you go about doing it? And what did you need to do? Like, if there's a future James Judd out there, he wants to be inspired, what would you tell him?
Well, I mean, I didn't really make a decision to be a conductor. I drifted into it, although I realized it was what I wanted to do from an early age. I studied piano when I was 4 in a small town in England with a church organist, and my dream was to play the church organ. And I loved, all my family, we lived in a small town, all my family and aunts, uncles, grandparents were all singing in the church choir, little church. It was a beautiful little organ. And I remember falling in love with the sound of the choir and the organ, being in tears before I could understand why. And then I studied the flute. Every school in England at that time, it was just a public school. Everybody could get a free instrument lent to them, could get a free lesson every week. And I was able to manipulate my lessons in the classes that I didn't like. So I would suddenly disappear in a geography or history class, much to the chagrin of the envy of my peers. And I'd go and play the flute, play the piano, play the organ. Then I was singing in the church choir, and suddenly they needed somebody to take a rehearsal one day, modest as it was. So I think the very first thing I conducted were probably my relations and friends with hymns and so on. And then in the town and at the school were orchestras. Even a little town has in England an amateur orchestra, amateur choral society, amateur operatic society, and at school we had an orchestra. So before long I was playing flute at the age of about 11 in the school orchestra, in the amateur orchestra. Every Monday evening they needed a timpanist. I played timpani. Didn't know what I was doing, but I played timpani. Then they needed a little bit rehearsal here and there, so I guess I did a few rehearsals. And I was living close enough to London. I went to hear concerts a lot. I was taken to hear concerts, and I just fell in love with that repertoire. I mean, it was unbelievable. And at home, when I was growing up, the first thing I remember was 78 gramophone records.
Yeah.
With the needle, listening to Schubert Unfinished Symphony, a few things that my parents, who were not musicians, had around the house. And so suddenly I fell in love with that sound, and I was an incredibly shy child. I mean, I was totally uncut out for that rough and tumble of the competition in the music world. But I eventually went to music college. I studied conducting, amongst other things, and I was a very good sight reader. I played for everybody's classes. So my advice to a young conductor is, you know, it's like politics. You shouldn't, in a way, have an ambition to be a conductor or a politician. You should experience life, become a human being, learn as much about other instruments as you can as a conductor, about history, about everything, get a good background, maybe play a lot, play in an orchestra first, and then you can become a conductor. Although, having said that, in Venezuela, what they've been doing disproves me totally, because, and beautifully I think, they teach conducting like an instrument. So from the beginning, you have 14-year-olds like Dudamel, when he was probably 14, 15, was already conducting more or less every week, maybe every day, one of the young orchestras. So the young conductor can get the feeling of what it's like to stand in front of people and communicate with them, which is a difficult thing if you start later. So there's no set path to become a conductor, you know, but you've got to follow your passion for it. I started a young orchestra when I was a student in London, and the first thing we did was Mahler's Second Symphony.
Wow.
And we moved the chairs around. I got friends to help me. Eventually we got Sir John Barbaroli as patron of the thing, and it still exists today, that orchestra.
Wow.
Of musicians from all the London music colleges. So, you know, and then I was involved with Claudio Abbado starting the what's now called the European Union Orchestra, then the Gustav Mahler Orchestra, Chamber Orchestra of Europe, which was a professional orchestra that continued from the youth orchestra. And so I've been involved with young orchestras always, and young people, as well as my, work with professionals.
One last question. What's in the future for James Judd?
Oh, I have no idea. Finish this interview, have a cup of coffee, just do, I'm very lucky in my life because I get asked to go. I spend a large part of my year in the Southern Hemisphere, in New Zealand, in Australia. I work a lot in Asia. I'm fortunate to work a lot in Europe. I mean, one of my last gigs was in Vienna with the Vienna Symphony, doing Schoenberg and Shostakovich. Next, what will be, then I go with smaller orchestras, famous orchestras, youth orchestras. It doesn't matter. Whoever is kind enough to ask me. It's just now more and more, it's all about just sharing music, really. It's not about career, If I'm lucky enough to go and conduct great orchestra, that's wonderful. If I'm working with kids, that's also wonderful. It's about just music. I don't like this business of music. I don't like the commercialism of it, in the sense that it sometimes produces kind of almost fraudulent music making that doesn't address the real language of music. But it's all about the essence of music and communication of music, and that music is essential in society. It's absolutely essential for all of us, and that's what we're trying to do here in Miami, is try to build a big base of the pyramid to try to get music working in the schools, out of school, for adults who have not had that wonderful experience yet, for them to realize that if they can communicate through music, they'll be able to communicate much better through language as well, be less fearful of life, and really start to think more before they take something for granted.
Do you have a website that people can go to get more information and see how they can get involved?
Yes, we do. It's the miamimusicproject.org. miamimusicproject.org.
And if you like what this man is saying, and especially if you agree with him, then let's all join up and make it worthwhile, especially for the kids. So come and join us.
Thank you.
Thank you.